Today, I have our therapist. Okay.
Two, one, live.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited about this show today. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that's relatable to everyone. And I'm so excited because today I have our therapist here who is such a familiar face. Both of these people are familiar faces. I'm the unfamiliar face, but I am Mimi. And here to my left, I have therapist Buxton with me. Very much good insight that's going to come from on this side, as well as this side where I have Mr. Gary right beside me with much more insight on things that happened way before our time. And we're going to get into all of it right here, right now on a project. Oh, a journey into mental health, Project Humanity. All right. So the topic that we're going to be discussing today, like I said, is something that's relatable to everybody, and it's simply poverty. You know, at one point we all were broke, or at one point we had to go without something. So we're just going to talk about how poverty can lead to a lot of other things, like depression, and how poverty can affect our relationships. Like, for example, we talked about earlier, if you're in love and you want to start a family but you just can't afford to, how do you get over that hurdle? And then also how poverty can lead to things like addiction, drugs. People turn to drugs when they're just so down and out, they don't know what else to do, nowhere to turn. You go to drugs, which is, not obviously the best way, but we're going to talk about how to get through those things. So the first topic of discussion will be depression. Sometimes being broke, like I said, isn't fun. And so Mr. Garrett wants to talk about how, well, what is depression? He said back in his day, people weren't depressed. We just started getting crazy people. So I want our therapist here to answer the question of what is depression and what does that looks like. And then Mr. Garrett is going to talk to us about how he didn't see those things when he was growing up.
Okay, depression is just a form of it's a feeling. It's a feeling associated with feeling down. Severe depression, clinical depression, is when you can't. It disables you from doing certain things. You can't go to work. You're sitting in your bed. You're not doing things. I guess in the older days they say you're lazy. But if you look at even like people like Abraham Lincoln back in the days, they used the word melancholy. Melancholy is just a sign. It's a deep seated depression. And depression, a lot of times it's different factors that might lead to it. It might be different things. It could be clinical depression where it's something, a chemical imbalance, or it can be depression because you're just depressed about your state of life or what's going on. But whenever we say depression, it's usually meaning it's causing you not to be able to function in a normal way. And that's what the clinical part of depression is. And so everybody have a little bit of it, a little down and some different people deal with it different ways. And so it's just different ways. But when it gets to a point where it's debilitating and you can't do those things, that's when you need to see somebody to get help on that.
Okay, so now that we kind of have like a real definition of exactly what depression is, Mr. Gary, I want you to talk to me about if you saw any of those things while you were growing up. Like, can you identify with anything that he said?
Well, depression, being debilitating and things of that nature, it was very difficult for me to identify that in my era when I grew up. We weren't allowed to be depressed. 5 a.m. in the morning, you're going to get up and go to work. Nobody cared how you felt or whether something was wrong with you. And if you didn't move, you're going to get a beat down. And so we didn't deal with it in that way. Now, the closest that we could identify to depression would have been grieving. And you grieve over the loss of someone, a loved one, and things of that nature. But that only lasts a couple of days, and then you have to move on from there. And so today's depression and anxiety that most people in your generation are claiming, we didn't claim it. We didn't acknowledge it. It did not exist for us.
Okay, so I love that you brought up about what you call today's depression because, like we were just talking about before we started, a lot has changed. I even brought up the quote, "Comparison is the thief of joy," and I guess you can look at depression as a thief of joy because you're not necessarily your happiest self when you're depressed. So that may come from this new thing called social media. We get on social media and we see what everybody else has, and we compare. And then that steals our joy because it's like, okay, I know even I'm guilty of it sometimes. If I see a real successful person that's the same age as me, I'm looking like, man, what am I doing with my life? What am I, I'm not accomplishing anything. They're out here doing this and this and that, but not realizing we're on two different paths. And that's what, social media can do to you, but that's not something y'all had to deal with back then. So, of course, what I'm saying, with the times are changing, so will the definition of depression, and so will the ways you can be depressed. So, I mean, talk to me a little bit about that because I know you're a therapist. Mm-hmm. So, talk to me about how social media has affected people's mental health.
Kind of bring up what Mr. Gary was saying. So, as the generations change, that's one of the hierarchies of needs. As we first, a lot of times in that generation Mr. Gary was in, it was about survival, and so you didn't have a choice about doing those things because you had to survive. But as we became more and more able to get into, especially Black people, able to get into a different level of learning, going to school and having these different things, then with the good things came the bad things. And one of the bad things came into play was these mental things or being aware of those different things. And so right now in your generation is different. Like I said, COVID had something to do with it. People are at home all the time and they're consuming. Not only became a consumers of products, we also became a consumer of TV. We became a consumer of entertainment, all those different things. A lot of times, like even what Ms. Gary was saying, back then, we didn't even have a choice. You didn't have time for entertainment. You didn't have a chance to do. A lot of our family never went on vacations or anything like that to compare it to, so they didn't have that time. But now people are saying, hey, if I don't go on vacation, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. It becomes this this thing because I am comparing myself and I am doing these things. And just because we say depression and anxiety doesn't saying that we're advocate for those things. We're saying, hey, we should be that, or we pushing those things, but that happens because of that. And I tell a lot of people when they're doing, I was like, what do you watch every day? What are you doing? Why? And and like I think I heard Mr. Gary say it before, it's a why. I always ask people about anything. Where do you get that why from? Why do you feel that why? Why do you believe in those things? Why do you feel like if I'm not married by a certain age, or I don't have a house, or I don't have a car, or I don't have a husband, then I'm depressed? What makes you saying there's something that's wrong with you? Because of those things, and comparison does do a lot of those things. Mm-hmm. And it's always about why do I feel that? Where did that seed come from? And so as times change, as we have more, those things come up because those different things allow us a thing to have that. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of like Gary said, I think when we were talking before is that yes, a lot of Black people weren't taking those pills and things like that because they couldn't afford. They didn't have a choice. So like we didn't have a choice to do certain things. We had to get up and do certain things when I was growing up because my parents were that generation. You know what I'm saying? As your generation changes, we have more than, things change about how we look at stuff. So I think it has a lot to do with, and also the suicides that we're having now. Because people like us parents, and they're thinking that they're living their best life, and everybody's living good, even though we know it's filtered. And we know that they're living with filters, and they're living with things that are not true. But it's like we live in this reality that's not real sometimes. And so I think a lot of that depression comes from that.
All right. So I just want to piggyback on something you said. I mean, we've been talking about a lot of the changes through our generations. And then we've also talked about comparison. So I want us to compare our own generations. Something that you wish your generation could do like this generation, or something that you wish this generation could take from your own generation. I'm going to start off as an example. Like for my generation, I wish we took from Mr. Gary's generation that strong-willedness. Back in the day when they were boycotting things and they were actually getting change that they wanted to see happen, it's hard for us to do that because a lot of us don't know how to get on the same page. We don't know how to get, the same issue in mind and really act on it to get that type of change that we want to see. But back then, they said we're going to boycott this and we're going to walk and not take the bus. They were actually doing stuff like that. So I wish my generation could kind of take that from Mr. Gary's generation. So, Mr. Gary, what's one thing you can see in the newer generation that you like, oh, this, that's kind of good. That's all right.
In your generation?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you guys have a whole different challenge than I've ever seen before. There's so many things that could trip you up. Well, we didn't have it. Back in my generation, we didn't have drugs. The only thing that we had was alcohol and some moonshine and beer, but we didn't have anything that would trip you up, cause alterations of your mind, anything that you couldn't recover from. There was no AIDS. There was none of that kind of stuff that was life-threatening. Whatever we got into, come the weekend, we could get out of it. And so your generation, quite frankly, has far, far more challenges. Your generation is smarter than we've ever been, but you have less assets than we have. My generation had quite a bit more assets than you. We own land and more cars and cattle and things of that nature, and cotton, corn. And so we had assets. Your generation has a pit bull primarily as your number one possession, and you don't inherit much. So I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I don't see where your generation owns a lot.
We don't own a lot. I will say that, but that comes with a lot of setting it up for us. Cause we're not born knowing how to own land. We're not born knowing how to work a field, or not that we even have to work a field. I feel like a lot of what we don't have is because we don't need it anymore. Like you said, y'all own cotton and stuff like that, but we got factories that's doing all that stuff that y'all had to do by hand. So it's like, hey, you know what I'm saying? I can go to the store instead of sewing my own clothes. But we're gonna let Mr. Buxton answer the question. What's the generation you kind of jealous of, or what?
I don't know. I think generational wealth is supposed to be, should be passed down. And I mean, not only from our parents, they had it, they also supposed to pass that down to the other generation. That's the difference between us and wealthy people. They pass their generation down. So if my parents had land, and I should have land if they passed it down correctly, if they taught us how to. You know what I'm saying? A lot of land that my father and them had, because it was homesteaded. They worked out there in Clark County, and they had land out there that they had since like the 1800s. But my dad did not pass that land down to us. So when we grew up, we didn't have that land because he didn't, pass that down. And one of the things I do like from your generation is that the fact that now, a lot of things, like I said, I don't agree with, but one of the things I do is that there's a lot more entrepreneurs. It's different. I don't know if it lasts now, but there are a lot of entrepreneurs. They are getting into a lot of stuff. A lot of them are owning things now. It's not intellectual property like Mr. Gary was saying. Like, I wish it was more of the physical part, but they do own their little brands and things like that, and they're making a lot of money. Now they're going to keep it, and what is missing out is they don't talk to the older generation and learn how to keep that money, how to put it in land, how to do it like Mr. Gary doing, own real businesses that are able to pass down and do things like that, which is, real. Like I said, we really are honored to, like I said, to be able to have him here, to be able to do the things that he has done, you know what I'm saying? Because that's what we need, people who are like Ms. Gary, who can show us and teach us how to do those things. And we miss those things, you know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, they owning all these things, but I don't know if any of those things are concrete or they're going to be able to pass to the other generation. Because my dad knew so much, but he did not pass his knowledge. And that's one thing that I hate. He did not pass the generation. He has 7 kids, and he did not pass that knowledge to us, you know what I'm saying? And how he did. So for him being a lawyer and knowing the laws, now he was great in the civil rights movement, but he was able to pass that on so that could be passed on. Now, I'm not mad at him. I ain't upset with him. I ain't, I had to go in, because at the end of the day, coming from that generation, my dad being the same generation, mom and Mr. Garrett's did, we still got to run our race. At the end of the day, I can't sit there and complain about, my dad or my mom. I got to run my race, because if it's fixed, if it's not fair, I still got to run. And I got to run it not for me, I had to run it for my family. But I do like the fact that y'all do have a lot of entrepreneurs in that thing.
Okay, Mr. Garrett, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about him saying that the generation, they kind of failed in the passing it down? Like, y'all had all of this, but teach me how to run it too. How do you feel about that? Or, yeah.
Well, there's some truth in that. We certainly thought that integration would have been better for our children. And so, we believe that instead of teaching them the arts and crafts and skills of what they were doing, because farming was hard, cutting pulpwood was hard, being a lumberjack was hard. Those things were hard, and so our parents thought that we would give our children a better opportunity by sending them to schools, and integration came in, and everything got taken out of whack. And so we didn't pass as much down to them in terms of knowledge, because they hoped that we would be smarter than that they were, and that we in fact would be teaching them. And that gap just got there, and we lost the connection between that child and that parent in terms of transfer of knowledge and assets.
Yeah.
We're talking about some really good stuff here. I hope y'all are listening. I hope y'all can identify with some of the things that we're talking about and can be aware of some of the issues that you might not know that you have that we've kind of discussed. But right now we're going to take a little break, and we've been talking about all this wealth. Now we're going to get some wealth of our own and pay some bills. We'll be right back after this.
SocratesGarrettENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. SocratesGarrettENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into M.Dot grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
Looking for the hottest content in the city of Jackson and surrounding areas? Check out WeBelieveDigital.com. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We Believe Digital Podcast is here for all your podcasting needs.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee. To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Welcome back. This is a journey into mental health. I am here with therapist Buxton as well as Mr. Gary here, and we're just having some good conversation. Before we went to break, we were talking about the passing down of generational wealth and how poverty can contribute to a lot of factors like depression, anxiety, addiction. But now we're going to talk about how some of that generational wealth that we say wasn't passed down as easily, what does that look like? So the skills, the assets, everything that we talked about, we say that it wasn't passed down as it should have been. So what are those skills? We talked about the vocational, the education, you know what I'm saying? So what are the skills that you feel should have been passed down? Mr. Garrett, I want to start with you because you talked about everybody should know how to farm. So talk about that.
Everybody should know how to feed themselves.
Okay.
I mean, if you can't feed yourself, then you're totally dependent upon someone else. Then you are in a very vulnerable position. So my generation, we all knew how to feed ourselves. Our garden was several acres that we grew everything that we needed. We didn't have to go to town but once a month to get basically a little flour and a little sugar. Other than that, we grew everything that we were required to sustain ourselves. We build our own houses, we build our own barns and things of that nature. So you need to possess those skills. As a boy, I would walk days and days in the woods. I mean, hours and hours, sometimes days because we spent the night, but would walk hours and hours trying to find a squirrel or a rabbit that I could kill that would become dinner in the evenings for the family. Today, squirrels don't run. Rabbits just look at you. Geese won't get out of the street. You got to stop. The deer stands up there and look at you.
They do.
None of that happened in my generation because he would have been on the table. And so, we had a hands-on approach to it. We studied on how to survive and provide for ourselves. And that was my generation.
Okay. So with that being said, I want to piggyback off of something you said about, survival. You were definitely living in a different time because, like he said, even the animals are evolving. I rode past the deer and he looked at me and I looked at him. But I'm glad he didn't move because my little car would have been so up on, But anyway, I want to talk about how throughout all of what we talked about, we have to remember the times that we were in. So even now, we're dealing with a lot of racism. We're dealing with a lot of systematic racism where a lot of this stuff is built against us. It's built for our families to fail. We talk about generational wealth, but they don't want us to have that. So when you have all these oppositions against you, how do we as a community stand up together to fight against, to make ourselves strong when there's so much against us? Mr. Buxton, you want to talk about that?
Like I said, I think one of the things I was talking about before is that, we need all the generations, to be together, to work on it, because we all got skills, you know what I'm saying? And so if you have a skill that you learned here, you teach me your skill, and I teach your skill, and we learn from each other. We have to want to. But the thing about it now is that people are just so settled in how they are, and they don't come together. And learn. The same way, like Mr. Gary was saying, the same way I kind of feel about my kids. I grew up in a country, like my dad is from Shibuya, Mississippi, in Clark County, one stop sign, you know what I'm saying? And so I grew up, fishing and hunting and doing all those things like that. But I know that I could survive. I always tell my wife, if something ever happened, I can survive because I learned those things. Now, the sad thing is my kids didn't. They grew up in the city and they don't know anything about that. You know what I'm saying? They don't know anything about that. And I hate that we weren't able to pass that generation. But what happened is we get so focused on trying to, get our kids to that next level, thinking that they need these things, but we forget that they need all those things. And I think sometimes we have to go back and relearn those things, and we need each other. And you're saying, well, we need your generation to kind of keep us, to make sure we still know how to do these things and get on the internet and do these things. We need our generation from the things they learn, and we need Mr. Garrett's generation too to remind us sometimes of the things that we need are there so important. Because at the end of the day, they survived through all that stuff, through that racism. Because the other time, they didn't have no choice. If they wanted to go out and live, they had to continue to survive. So I have so much respect for that generation, because that's my mom's generation and the generation before them. Because if any of those generations wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. So in order, you always have to honor your ancestors and the people who came and survived. Every time I used to see my wife's great-grandma, I would always kiss on her head and tell her how much I love her. Because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have my wife. You know what I'm saying? And so you remember and honor those different generations, but we have to bring them in. And I always sit up on the people who older, who've been around, and I listen to their stories. I don't care if they got a second grade education. Since they survived, they have something to bring me, and it can help me with knowledge and help me learn and continue to survive. And I think that's that part that's missing, that we so focused on doing us. The world has done us. That's what I tell persons all the time. We're getting done, because when you're doing you, you know what I'm saying, the world is doing you. You know what I'm saying? So I think we can't get so focused on just trying to do it ourselves and be independent, because that's the American ideal. But communities, that's how they survive. You see anybody else from any other community, from Africa or from Trinidad or something like that, when they come in, they survive. They don't go to no stores. They do everything in the house. They take care of everything themselves. And so we need to learn that. We need to have those skills to pass on so that we can continue to grow.
Okay, so you feel like we need to, like you said, all of our generation need to just come together, and that's the best way we're going to combat
if they want to. It might be a thing that never happens, but I think, it's that's what's needed in order to grow. You know what I'm saying? You need that's what the Bible talks about, having many counselors. You need different counselors. You need older counselors. You need young counselors. You need, it's a story about, like I think in the Bible about Solomon, when his daddy died. You know what I'm saying? He went to the older counselors, his daddy counselors, and they told him what to do, and he didn't listen to it. He went to his friends that knew, his young friends, and they did it, and he lost his kingdom because of that. Because he didn't use that wisdom to do what was before him. He only counted on the people that was like him. You need other people that has a vast knowledge, and you also need the people who are young too. Because when I first started out, I didn't know how to do no PowerPoint. But guess what? I had somebody work for me knew PowerPoint, and they taught me PowerPoint. You know what I'm saying? And so I was able to keep on. Yeah, when it first came out, I'm a bomb on PowerPoint now. But when it was just about 20 years ago. But I had a person that worked for me, was an intern, and they showed me how to do it. Instead of me saying, "Oh, you can't teach me young," but hey, I went in there, they showed me how to do it, and after that I go. You need those people. Right.
So speaking of learning from different generations, Mr. Gary, there was a time where you were my age. So, what's something that you learned from the generations that were above you at the time? What did you learn from them that you still kind of possess and keep with you today?
I think the generation above my generation were mean. Oh. I think that they told you to do something one time, you moved immediately. If you didn't, you're going to get up off the floor. There was no such thing as no child support collection. There was no such thing as no marital counseling. There was no such thing as the lack of discipline in the household. They were a mean, no-nonsense generation. And so, I learned discipline from them. I learned how to follow orders and commands and direction. I learned how to be in self-control because I couldn't speak back. I couldn't talk back to anybody. So I learned a lot from them in terms of how you be disciplined. And I will just say about my generation and the generation before me You never saw any obese people. You never saw anybody there. If you go back and you look at all of your groups of the Temptations and you look at Smokey and all of them were so small because they ate, they prepared for you. You had food there every day. We never went a day without some greens and cornbread or lima beans or some pork chops. Every day there was a healthy meal on the table. We didn't have pick fives and fast food and all that stuff that blow you up. And so I just think that generation was more disciplined, more focused, and we were more united than any other generation. Finally, that was the generation of Black Power. It came in my generation with James Brown. I'm Black and I'm Proud, and Naturals and Dashikis and Stokely, and all of those group of guys were saying that, we are a special, talented group of people. I don't see that in other generations.
Okay, what changed? What do you think changed?
What do I say?
Because y'all are still here. Now, that's what we're going to talk about. Because from my perspective, I feel like I'm not born knowing everything. I'm not born knowing what you knew. So the only way I can know and learn is if you tell me. So at some point, all of us have to take some accountabilities for what we do not see, especially our older generations. Like a child, if you're a parent and you're raising your child and you say, oh, my child can't talk, this child's so dumb, she's so stupid. Well, baby, you a mama. You ain't teach her how to talk. You know what I'm saying? So at some point we have to say, okay, where did and I think we kind of sensed on there was a gap, but even when we were talking, I was talking with Curtis. He said that when the crack, whatever came around and people got distracted or whatever, and we stopped focusing on what really was the issue, and we stopped focusing on progressing as a community, we kind of paused, and now we want to look at it and say, oh, what's going on with y'all? What's going on? We have to, like I said, get together. So what's the first step? What do we feel like the first step is? First of all, we have to acknowledge what's the change that we want to see within our community. What's the change that we want to see within this generation? The generation that's the children of tomorrow, or whatever they say. What do we feel like needs to happen? And then how we make that happen?
Well, first of all, you have to acknowledge where you are. Mm-hmm. The generation has to assess properly where it is. Now, your generation has too much killing going on in it. It has, the music is okay. Terrible.
Okay, yeah.
The family structure is gone. And so your generation has got a real challenge to correct this ship that it's sailing. And once you assess where that is and identify the problems, then maybe you can come together and force some kind of a strategy to try and right the direction that we're moving into.
I definitely agree about what you said about the music, because sometimes I listen to what, people my age I listen to, and it's nothing but killing, stabbing, and choking. But it's like if this is what we're playing on in our heads all day, this is the product that you're gonna see. And I want Mr. Buxton to kind of touch on that. How important is what you listen to? How important is that in regards to your mental health?
Well, whatever you say, you become. Whatever you speak, that's what you become. You always speak around. If your parents always say you can be a failure, that's what you become. You know what I'm saying? So whatever you speak, you're creating something with that. So if all you're listening to all the time is this negative stuff, that's what you become more negative. You know what I'm saying? When I used to work out all the time, I had to listen to hard music because I wanted to be hard. You know what I'm saying? So that music got me hype and I got me hard, and that's what I listened to. You become what you speak, you become what you're around. You become what you listen to, and so those things affect us. You know what I'm saying? And so anything, when we're talking, I think even the whole thing is that we can all kind of fuss about how society is or what it is. But my thing, I'm a solution focused person. That I can fuss, I can complain, or I can do something about it. My thing is that I want to do something about it, because at the end of the day, it's not just generations. It's my community. You know what I'm saying? It's black people. When they look at us, they don't say, "Oh, this is an older black man, young black man, middle-aged black man." It's just black people. You know what I'm saying? The same way, it's the same way. You always got a generation of people who are doing. You got a generation of people who don't care. And you got a generation of people who just don't know. You know what I'm saying? Our job is still, at the end of the day, to say, hey, that's just a black person. They don't care about if you're in school. Just like if I take off my little work clothes and I go out and I get stopped by a police, all you see is a black man, a big old black man in the car. You know what I'm saying? And so my thing is to try to help, and all we can do is help us, put it out. That's one of the reasons I come here and do this. Or some of Mr. Gary do this. That's the way Paris do this, the way you're doing it. Because we're trying to go in and give you an alternative. This is how things can be if we're willing to change. Because I can fuss about it all day, and I do. I fuss about it sometimes. We get on our soapbox, or I can come and try to do something to make a change. Because that's how we talk about those people in the 60s and the 70s, and I'm almost a big fan of those. But they decided to do something about it and not just sit there and just complain about how things are. Because at the end of the day, all we can do is really try to fix us. We can try to fix us, try to fix our children. We can talk, we can teach, and we can lead. And it's always about leading by example, too. I can always talk, but I got to do it, too. I got to do the work. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times what it is we lazy and we selfish. At the end of the day, almost all this comes around from being selfish. We just kind of want to we just want to do ourselves, take care of us, and not worry about anybody else. And that community part is what's lacking. You know what I'm saying? We're not trying to go, or we get up and we're not trying to help anybody else. We're not trying to bring anybody else up with us. You know what I'm saying? Now, once I make you aware of it, if you don't want to do it, then I'm not going to waste my time because life is too short for me to sit there if you're not going to do anything. I'm going to go to that next guy or that next person and try to help them,
Okay. You got anything you want to respond to?
Well, I just got a text from a friend of mine and asked that does he need to bring me a love jacket?
Who that person?
Yeah. Well, no, this was another friend.
Okay.
I think that no, I don't need a love jacket. You know what that is, don't you?
No, I don't. Y'all gonna have to enlighten me. What that mean?
Okay. Well, ask the psychiatrist. He'll tell you what it is.
I have no idea.
Well, yeah, this is when you put your crazy people. They
The
put
mental health.
They can't. They got they hugging themselves.
What they call
Oh, a straight jacket.
A straight jacket. They call it love jacket.
You call it love because you're hugging.
Oh, okay. I can see that. I can see
You know
that.
what I'm saying? So
But no, definitely not. We don't need one
I
of
don't
them.
need a love jacket, not yet. But so I just think that you guys, we got to work on it. Like the psychiatrist says that we're all responsible for trying to correct it. Some people think that we might have a generation that's just lost. We just got to abandon it and try and start over and work with those in the kindergartens and in the elementary schools. But these 17, 18, 19-year-old group, that's a little bit rough right now. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit harder to deal with. And so it's going to require some collective understanding of how we fix this problem.
Great. Well,
And I'll give you one more thing for you. I talk to a lot of guys, and sometimes it's not up under, under therapy. They come into mental health, and I talk to them. There's so many guys that I talk to, and they say, "Hey, I don't understand how to be a man," and that bothers me. You know what I'm saying? I talk to person about that. They understand about being a man, but there's so many different things of growing up about. When I grew up, I didn't have to worry about being a man because even if I didn't see my dad, I saw other guys that were just men. They knew they did man things. But nowadays, there's so many things about being a man. You don't want to be a toxic man. You want to be this kind of man, and so they don't. I said, man, But what happened? They don't have a lot of good examples of manhood, and they need it. You know what I'm saying? And that's the only what it takes is for men that are men to be men. You got to be a man. You got to be not trying to be somebody else, not trying to conform to somebody else so that these males can see. And it bothered me. I was like, how you driving this and that. But they are fully developed physically, males, but they don't understand what man is and what the definition of a man. And that bothers me that we don't have it. And so every time I can sit there and talk to a guy, not trying to be just, hey man, this is how you lead, this is how you do this thing, because it's so many different things they're trying to get, telling you how to be a man. It just, but you follow a person as a man. Find somebody that you look up to and walk like they walk. You know what I'm saying? That's how you learn how to be. Like my daddy was doing things, this is what a daddy did. You know what I'm saying? My daddy went outside, he did certain things, and I just did what I saw him do. And that's what we need to do now. We need to find somebody, you get up on the people, and nobody mentors harder nowadays. And I'm not saying, hey, I want to be your mentor. Just follow people that you see are good. And that's what I had. I had several, even my daddy wasn't. I had Mr. Harris lived next door to us, and I got to be friends with him because we broke his window. We broke his window, and his mom and dad said, hey, bring them boys over here and make them sit and talk to me every day. One of the best things that ever happened to me.
And I think that's where we need to start it, because I can want a mentor, but I have to have someone that's willing to mentor me.
Yeah.
So like we've all been saying this whole time, it's a collective thing. I can't learn from you unless you want to teach me. And so I hope you learned something from this long, great conversation, insightful conversation that we've had from different generational perspectives. The biggest thing I know I took away is what I'm saying about myself is, what the Bible says, speak those things as if they were. So if you are feeling depressed or you are feeling, down and out, say, I am happy. I am feeling great today. I am successful. I am, speak things as if they were. That was my biggest takeaway, and it's definitely something I'm going to start doing a little bit more. This was a journey into mental health. I hope you enjoyed this conversation that we had. See you again next week, same time.